Super excited that you guys are joining us for what we hope will be a timely and important conversation, specifically focused around parent and family engagement as it relates to positive youth development. My name is David Miller, representing the Strategic Resources Group. I will be co-moderating this interactive discussion with one of my mentors and good friends and colleagues, Richard Rowe. We have a few housekeeping things that we want to make you aware of. We're also going to be doing a breakout session where folks will be going into a breakout room and answering some really important questions as it relates to parents and family engagement. And we will give you guys some directions. And so let's go to the next slide. So just really quickly, please remain muted. Depending upon the size of the group, we'll probably open up the lines for some dialogue. Please utilize the chat box. We have found, as we're doing these workshops and these TA series, we've been able to spark a lot of discussion in the chat box. We archive the chat box and we'll go over and we'll review toward the end of the presentation. Super important that you complete the evaluation, and we'll give you some guidance and some direction about the evaluation. And last but not least, have fun, learn, ask the tough questions. I really believe that this is one of the most important questions that we need to address, particularly as we talk about positive youth development. I think all too often, ladies and gentlemen, parent engagement is an afterthought. Oftentimes, it's something that people realize we need to do, but oftentimes there isn't paid staff. There isn't a strategic plan in terms of how to engage parents, and many times our offerings to parents are episodic at best. We'll do something, we'll put it out there, and then we don't get the numbers, we'll pull back, and we may not do it again. And so we really want you guys to begin to think about best practices that you guys are already engaged in, and we're going to share some of those best practices with you. Next slide, really quickly. And so, Brother Adam Jackson from BCYF. Adam, do you want to share a little bit about the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund?
Yes, sir. Peace and blessings, everybody. My name is Adam Jackson. I'm the communications lead for the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund. And so I just want to give you a brief understanding of the work that we do here in Baltimore. Baltimore Children and Youth Fund is a nonprofit organization that stewards public funds, particularly around children and youth. It was a fund that was created in 2016 by Baltimore City voters, and has been around since then. Since last year, BCYF has been an independent entity. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing in the past 2 or 3 years at this point has been not just allocating resources for grant making, but also technical assistance and excellent public events like these. And so we really hope that you get involved in the work that we're doing. You can go check out our website at bcyfund.org. You can also reach out to me after this session if you have any questions about BCYF at ajackson@bcyfund.org. Thank you.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, here are the guiding principles. You can read them at your leisure. This particular, and they're the guiding principles that are super important. You can read that as your leisure, and you will have access to the deck. This particular series, and this is an entire series, because we realize, particularly in the city of Baltimore, that TA training, professional development is super important for grassroots organizations in the mentoring field, and it's hosted by Strategic Partnerships and Mentor Maryland / Mentor DC. Here's what we've covered so far. We've had a blast covering a myriad of topics, and here's just a thumbnail sketch of what we've already accomplished. Also, keep in mind, we'll be doing a small group session this coming Friday, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then we actually have one final session, and then you guys will be receiving, because we have your email addresses, November 11th and 12th, you will receive more information. We have developed an amazing virtual youth development forum, which will have some dynamic speakers who are doing amazing work. It is absolutely free. We got all of the bells and whistles. And so you'll be receiving information about that via email, and you definitely want to respond. It's a Thursday evening, which will be our kickoff, and then a full day Friday. You definitely don't want to miss that. So let's go to the next slide. Your presenters today are Richard Rowe and David Miller. I'm going to introduce myself really super quickly. David Miller, born and raised in the city of Baltimore, West Baltimore, to be specific, and have been able to carve out really an amazing niche of work, primarily focused on engaging youth and families, with a specific focus on Black fathers. So let me go ahead over to my good colleague and friend and mentor, Richard Rowe.
Good evening, everyone. And again, welcome to our session this evening. My name is Richard Rowe, and as David mentioned, we are colleagues and friends and associated with the Strategic Resources Group. My work over the last 100 years, it seems like, has been basically working on the ground, in the suites, in the background, in the foreground, trying my best to lift up and honor, the important work of our ancestors around in service of Black families and communities and children and youth. And so a lot of my work over the years have been tied to a number of organizations doing that kind of work and making certain that voices are heard, that young people are honored and respected, families are honored and respected, and that we basically keep our eyes on the prize. And when we do that, we all win. So my work is closely tied to a lot of the work of Regina and David Miller, close friends, close associates who I honor and respect, and glad to be a part of the Strategic Resources Group team.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, super quickly before we go back to Richard to kick this thing off, Richard is going to really frame the conversation. We're going to look at different types of families, family configurations. We have some really super content around evidence-based and promising practices to share with you. But then we're also going to want to hear from you in your breakout sessions in terms of what's working. What are some of the kinds of things that you're doing within your own individual space? We're going to talk about characteristics of effective family-centered engagement, looking specifically at programs. We're going to talk about barriers and challenges, looking at key strategies, Q&A, and then what is most important is the evaluation. Definitely need you guys to complete the evaluation. We hope to do some future training, and the evaluation actually guides our training. Richard?
Right. Thank you, David. So again, when David mentioned that engaging parents and families has become an afterthought for a lot of programs, how did we get there? Who could have thought that, given all that our young people are facing today and are trying to navigate through the trials and tribulations of life and trying their best to really succeed, how could we basically not focus on the place where our children and youth come from? Families basically are essential. In this day and age, we have basically been confronted, not only during the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, a lot of forces, external forces that can cripple adults. Can you imagine what it's doing to our young people? And so, leaving families on sidelines cannot be an afterthought, but should be a serious consideration and must become a part of any program working with young people. Now, we can understand why that might have happened, because we just basically are moving fast. We think that the African proverb, it takes the entire village, no longer matters. But we believe that it takes the entire village to really help young people succeed. It takes the entire village, all of us leaning in and surrounding our children with life-affirming and life-saving, supports that basically can provide them with all the key protective factors that will allow them to succeed on the education front, in relationships, in their personal lives, and going forward. So this is a session that we are simply going to basically emphasize again why it's so important to engage families and engage parents, even though it might for some be a difficult challenge for some reasons that we might allude to in our presentation. But nevertheless, it is a challenge that we need to basically take on. And it is hopefully, once you leave this presentation, we'll come to realize that it can be done and that there are some organizations that can be supportive. And if you have questions about some of those challenges and some of the barriers and things that you have basically been confronted with when you're trying to engage families and parents in this work and caregivers in this work, then hopefully we can address some of those this evening. But if in fact we can't address all of those concerns, keep in mind that we will have another session Friday morning for a deeper dive into basically how best to do this work. This slide here, basically in front of you, just lists some of the challenges that our young people are facing today. And I'm not going to go through all of these. Many of us know that our young people are faced with numerous challenges, single parent households, although that's not a judgment on that family configuration. It nevertheless means that there is a parent trying to do the work of two parents or a number of parents or a number of caregivers in that house. So when it falls on that one parent, it means that there are greater challenges and greater concerns that that parent has to address and has to deal with. So we want to basically lift that up as a challenge or an issue that our young people are confronted with: drugs, alcohol abuse. Not going to again go deep into any of these issues highlighted on these two slides, but I want you all to understand that these are the challenges that our young people are confronted with and faced with, and so we know we need to do everything we can to shore up every kind of supports that our young people need in order to navigate through some of the things that they're trying to deal with. Political and social issues. This last year has been basically full, not this last year, but I mean, all the years we've been confronted with a lot of political and social issues that go on around our young people that basically they're trying to figure out, why we can't seem to get our acts together regarding, some of the social issues around justice and fairness and equity and diversity and all of those kinds of issues that keep popping up and that we're all confronted with, but our young people are seriously trying to understand, are we there for them? Are we fighting for them? Are we fighting on their behalf? And so this is another challenge that they are faced with: materialism. We live in a society, as we all know, that promotes, uplifts, glorifies, what you have, how much you have, where you bought it from, and so forth. And so this can become a serious challenge for our young people who may not be able to buy or might not be able to basically show off their material trappings. And so we really know that a lot of our young people sometimes struggle with that issue around materialism. And so we basically just want to list that as another serious challenge that our young people are faced with. Obesity, I only lift that up in terms of health-related issues around, what some of our young people are confronted with regarding, shaming of one's shapes and one's weight and so forth and so on. And a lot of young people basically are growing up on not the best diets, not healthy diets and so forth, have to basically rely on eating whatever is put in front of them, whether it's from the home or whether it's from the schools or whether it's from community events, etc. A lot of our young people are calling out and simply letting us know that this is one of those issues that they are trying to work through and trying to deal with. Inequality, I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but again, if there was ever again a time for all of us to lean in and to really help our young people understand that no, we are not living in a just society. No, we are basically confronted with all these effects of white supremacy and structural racism and all of those things that basically pile up on one's psyche, and when one is trying to really deal with all these different kinds of issues. Again, if it's impacting adults, and you all know, those of you on this webinar that basically are seriously trying to deal with these issues, like suffering from racial battle fatigue and all of those things, if it's affecting us as adults, as families, think about how it's impacting our young people, social anxiety, stress, and so forth. And so it's another challenge that we have to basically deal with. And then, of course, police brutality, Black lives don't matter in this society. And so if we have to say all lives matter, if we have to say that Black lives matter, then what does that say about the understanding that all lives should matter? We should not have to basically keep lifting that up as a reality. So again, police brutality, watching over and over again, the brutality of young people, brutality of men, women, Black men and women in our society. Other folks are experiencing police brutality. And so if you are watching, news scenes, or you're watching on TV, different incidences that occur quite frequently in our society, we need to basically understand that our young people are trying to work through that and trying to understand why one is being attacked or harassed or even killed as a result of their skin color, or being in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time. And so these are, again, we're only lifting these up as challenges that we have to basically keep in mind as we understand why it's so important to really, to really support families and parents of the children that we are working with. This slide here says also that helps to validate why this working with families and parents are so important. The research says what? The research shows that when parents are involved in their children's lives, the children are more likely to do what? Earn better grades, score higher on tests, attend school regularly, have better social skills, show improved behavior, be more positive. This is the research. This is not David or Richard basically with anecdotal facts and so forth, statistics. We're looking at what the research is telling us and informing us why, again, we need to basically be in support of families and parents and caregivers. When that happens, young people are better able to form trusting relationships. They're able to basically complete homework assignments. We know how important schoolwork and homework. They're better able to do what? Graduate, continue their education, to stay on the right path, to basically work through and to feel good, to feel valued, to feel respected, and also to enhance social and emotional stability. And where we are as a society, this is critical in helping our young people do what? Improve their social, their psychological health, their physical health, their emotional health. And so when we are involved as parents and families, these important outcomes occur. I am basically, came out of a period of time when, we had supports coming from family, church, school, and other institutions within that community. Today, it's not that same kind of configuration of life-saving, life-affirming institutions that are supporting our young people. And so, again, we need to reconstruct the village. We need to reconstruct, a climate and environment where our children can succeed and fare well. And so just wanted to point to those kinds of key outcomes that basically validates why this work is so important. Types of family configurations, we know that there are all kinds of family configurations today, including single parent households, married couples. You have male, female, father, mother, you have co-parenting, you have cohabitation, you have fathers, single fathers these days, you have mothers who are basically in the workplace at a higher level than ever before. You have grandparents, you have caregivers, you have all of these different family configurations. And we are suggesting that in order to really be empathetic and be sympathetic and understanding of the families that we're working with, we need to keep in mind that we're no longer of the leave it to beaver type era, when you might have two parents in a household and you have, basically, that kind of family configuration. Today, you might be confronted with every type, as I listed before: single parents, married parents, cohabitating parents, caregivers that might include a grandmother who's dealing with her children as well as grandchildren. You are having more and more fathers, serve as in that capacity as well. So we have families that are made up of the LGBTQ community in terms of who basically takes the lead in offering support to young people in those kinds of families as well. So we have all these different kinds of family configurations. I will simply share with you all that Dr. Robert Hill, who was an outstanding professor at Morgan State at one time, also led the research department at the Urban League, lifted up back in the 1970s or 80s, I believe his book was released, The Strengths of Black Families. He came up during that era with 27 different family configurations back then. And so can you imagine today that if we simply settled on one type of family, one size fits all kind of interventions, we will leave out a lot of people and not be in support of the different types of families that we are confronted with today. Next slide. So David is going to share some information about one of the family configurations that is building or has increased over the years, and we're talking about Black fathers. David?
And really quickly, thank you, Richard. And what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, is we're framing this out for you, and then we're going to go into our breakout sessions, and there'll be a deeper level of engagement. Jill mentioned in the chat, homeless families. I think that in most cities, Baltimore included, we really just don't have a clear understanding of how many children, youth, and families are actually homeless. And so that's another special population, if you will, that I think that we need to talk about. And so as Richard indicated, with all of these different kinds of configurations, one of the things that I wanted to share that I really believe is oftentimes discussed, but in terms of, interventions and energy and resources, I think that we've given up, particularly on Black fathers and fathers of color. And I don't think that, one, we understand the data. Two, I don't think that we necessarily understand the power that fathers bring to the table. And so in 2013, the CDC and Health and Human Services released a major study that really looked at fathers and fathering, looking at fathers representing every race and trying to determine levels of involvement. And what we learned from that study, the study was published in 2013, a little less than 4,000 people participated in this diverse survey of fathers to get a better understanding of father involvement. What we found, or what we gleaned from that particular study, is that Black fathers are more involved in what we consider to be daily activities of their children, more involved than fathers of any other racial or ethnic group. When we talk about taking to school, picking up from school, participating in extracurricular activities, well, we also found out in that study that a lot of those dads happen to be what's considered non-custodial, non-residential, that a lot of those dads don't necessarily live with their children, but they're actively involved and engaged, which debunks a lot of the myths. There've been so many documentaries about the vanishing Black father. And so one of the things that we wanted to uplift in this presentation is the importance of really focusing specifically on recruiting and retaining fathers, particularly in the work, in the youth development work. One of the things that I'm really amazed at, particularly when we talk about mentoring programs, is oftentimes a parent will come in and sign up to get their son or daughter involved in a mentoring program. But on the intake form, on the questionnaire, on the orientation, nobody ever asks about family dynamics. Nobody ever asks, is dad involved? Is there a stepdad? Are there other male figures in this young person's life? And so what ends up happening is we automatically assume that while we need to go out and recruit mentors, that they're not stable fathers within their family. And so a lot of the work that I've done over the last couple of years is really beginning to look at addressing the family dynamic within mentoring programs. Next slide. And so we just got a couple of quick slides we want to go over when we talk about fatherhood, fathers and fatherhood. One of the things that we know about parent engagement, as Richard indicated from the research, when you go to any of the federal resources or statewide resources and you begin to look at the data, particularly around fathers, we know that when fathers are involved, they dramatically increase academic indicators. They reduce, in some instances, the likelihood of mental health challenges, anxiety, depression, and some other issues, and they increase social engagement and other things that we begin to look at when we talk about school performance. And so oftentimes, y'all, we're not necessarily looking at the data. We're continuing to go on things that we're hearing and not necessarily uplifting what we know and what the evidence is telling us. You go to the next slide. A couple things to consider, particularly when we think about engaging young fathers. I just participated in a project with young fathers in Atlanta, Georgia, and the young fathers were sharing with us some really vital resources and information about some of the things that they're going through. And so there's just a couple of things that we'd like to point out. One is that a lot of young fathers, because of their age, are experiencing significant financial hardships. And the focus groups that we did with these dads in Atlanta, some of these young men had children as young as 14, and the issue of economics and finding a job and supporting their family was a major issue. Next one, a lot of these young fathers struggle to navigate systems. Many of you may be working with teen dads and teen moms, so this is really important. Oftentimes, these young fathers require legal support. And so again, beginning to think about, as you build out services for fathers, are you able to connect to pro bono services? We also know that oftentimes, particularly young fathers, tend to be more involved with mom as the baby is young. And so are there ways that we can do workshops and support groups to kind of strengthen the bond between those young fathers and the mother of their children? One of the things that we also found out in these recent focus groups that we did is that these young fathers are interested in developing relationships with older fathers and sort of a mentoring relationship. And most of these dads really need a lot of advice around parenting. And so we really wanted to share, once again, some information around the importance of fathering and working with fathers as it relates to mentoring programs and other youth development programs. Two quick things that I think are really important. Have you surveyed the fathers in your networks? I think you always want to survey the people that you're working with before you start rolling out services. Oftentimes we do the reverse. We design and roll out the services, and then we ask participants what they want. And then the second, once we kind of figure out what we're doing, are those services realistic? Next slide. And Richard is going to dive in and talk a little bit about single parents.
Which is another, I mentioned this earlier, but it's another, thanks, David. This is another family configuration that we need to basically be mindful of as we do our outreach. You know, this stat here indicates that there are millions of young people, children, living with a single mother in the United States, and about 3.27 million children living with a single father. Again, which suggests that, you know, there are family configurations within our communities that where there is a great need within that family for support. But as you do your outreach, as we do our outreach to these families, we need to keep in mind how we can also be of support to those different kinds of family configurations. Didn't mention, but we're not going to try to have time to get into all the different family configurations. I think we're going to also say something briefly about grandparents, but keep this in mind, they're same gender family configurations where, the parents are of the same gender. Don't want to ignore or leave that out, and only lift that up again because we have to be mindful of the families and the parents that we're working with today. And there is no such thing today as one size fits all. So here we are with single parents. And if you are a single parent, I'm quite sure that some of you all out there are single parents. You know that these are some of the challenges that single parents are facing. Financial instability, one parent working, oftentimes that parent is working, and we, through this pandemic, realized that a lot of these single parents are working on the front line, not getting the kind of wages that other families, other individuals are getting. And when they're relying on one salary, it makes it very difficult to deal with all the different expenses and requirements that is necessary in order to take care of the children in those families. Juggling between work and family. Sometimes you don't have the leisure to basically work when you want to, or work from home, or to do what some of us have been able to do during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, and going forward. And so when you are called and when you are on the clock, you have to be on that clock, and you can't basically try to figure out how to be at home and also at work. And so you have to basically figure that out. That's a challenge. That becomes very difficult for some of the families that you will be working with. A sense of loss and feeling of loneliness, is another key challenge. Again, these are some of the challenges. I'm not going to go through all of them, but here, keep in mind, as you do your work, and this information will be made available to you so that you can develop your intervention or develop your component, parent and family engagement component, based on what the research is sharing with us with regards to this family configuration. Next slide. Engaging single parents is a very, very important process. And we offer, some of the ways that this process can be, even though it may be, a challenge to engage single parents. We like to believe that what we are sharing with you this evening will be in support of your efforts to really bring more of the single parents, whether it's male, female, whether it's father, mother, a caregiver, or so forth. We want to make sure that you are giving some key tips to basically engage this family constellation. So creating meaningful resources. We basically know what that means in terms of helping these parents navigate whatever issues that they might be confronted with within that they are going through themselves, whether it's personal, whether it's work related, whether it's basically community related. We want to make certain that we are connecting them to those very important resources and being able to refer them to those resources. Mental health related, it could be any of the above. But we want to be able to do what? To have those, be able to help those families tap into those resources that can be of significant support and benefit to single parents. Access to legal supports. We want to make certain that, single parents understand that, there are resources that can assist with any legal related issues that they are confronted with. Offering support groups, face-to-face. We know support groups work. Support groups are valuable. Work groups are critical to the survival of folks going through, challenges or experiencing challenges. And whether they be face-to-face, we know now that we can do this work face-to-face or virtually. And so we want to be able to extend those services and resources and invite single parents and all parents to really take advantage of support groups and healing groups and so forth and so on. Workshops and seminars. We have both Maryland mentors and also such strategic resource group. We have a lot of different listings of workshops and seminars that are critical to share with single parents who are faced with an assortment of all kinds of issues. And so we want to be able to provide those workshops and seminars and allow parents and family members to take advantage of those issues, those topics, to be able to work through any kind of struggles or any kind of challenges that they are confronted with. And lastly, when they create opportunities for single parents raising children with special needs. We know that there are a lot of parents out there who basically have children with special needs, whether those needs be physical, whether they might be psychological. We want to not leave any family behind. And so we want to make certain that we are aware within our organizations of what those opportunities and services are. And we want to be able to share those with the single parents as well. I think I'm gonna turn this over to David real quick, but this is grandparents and other caregivers. David.
So ladies and gentlemen, just before we go into our breakout, and we're going to provide you guys with some directions, as we've already indicated, in terms of having you think about some special populations, if you will, in terms of parents and parent engagement. Grandparents and other caregivers are often left out of that conversation. Many times it seems that we may not necessarily be knowledgeable that everybody doesn't live in a traditional, two-parent household. Also be mindful that many times children are living in foster care arrangements or in group homes. Particularly think about Baltimore, Maryland, and in the state, oftentimes there are just so many kind of different, again, family configurations as we've already uplifted, and grandparents and caregivers is another big one. And a lot of times grandparents are raising children, other caregivers, big brothers, nieces, cousins, and they really don't even have any legal standing. So it becomes an issue sometimes when it relates to like registering children for school and some other things. So let's go to the next slide. Grandparents play a significant and a unique role in communities in terms of raising children, just as we indicated, or maybe we didn't indicate earlier, but you see the rise in single dads raising children, you see a rise in grandparents raising children. And so we really wanted to begin to uplift that, because you may find that in the program that you're offering, you just have a lot of grandparents and other caregivers that are raising children. And so it's important to be able to provide those kinds of services. Next slide. And again, everybody will get a copy of the slides as well as the video. When we think about some of the challenges, many times grandparents are physically and emotionally exhausted. I remember doing some work up in Newark, New Jersey, working with some families in public housing. This was quite a few years ago. And there was a grandmother who, hypertension, diabetes, single, grandmom living in public housing, raising 4 boys by herself. And I was just overwhelmed just being in the apartment, having a conversation with grandmom, I'm sorry. Many times our elders, grandparents have increased health challenges. Many times there are legal challenges as the grandparent may not have legal guardianship of the grandchildren. Many times there's a lack of support from other family members. Many times issues of finances come into play. And then one of the bigger ones is kind of understanding the younger generation, music, lifestyles, and technology. Strengths of grandparents. How do we kind of build, y'all, on the strengths of grandparents? Wisdom from years of lived experience, family connections, kind of know a lot about family history, positive identity and family continuity, a sense of security, a sense of family pride, and unconditional love. Next slide. And just here, just a couple of things that we believe are really important in terms of working with grandparents. Education, helping grandparents, navigate systems and navigate even things like navigating the school system for parents, for the biological parents can be a challenge. But if you have older grandparents or even great grandparents raising children, helping them understand ways to really navigate systems, increasing emotional support. I think developing support groups for grandparents is really, really important, where grandparents can have this peer exchange, because there's some grandparents who've been doing it well and have been doing it at a higher level. And then last, any ways that we can provide any kind of financial support and incentives. Next slide. Okay, and so ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be going into breakout rooms, and Regina is going to assign you to a breakout room. Each breakout room, we want you guys to select a spokesperson so somebody can volunteer. We need you to take notes. And when we come back and process, each group will be able to share some reflections based on the two selected questions that we have in the breakout room. So let's go to those questions really quickly. Next slide. Here are your two questions. What have your efforts been to engage parents? We want you guys to be super concrete. What have you done? What are you currently doing to engage parents? And then what have been some of your challenges? Let's be really, we don't have to be politically correct. Let's be really honest about what some of those challenges are. And then second, what have been some of the strategies that work best for engaging parents? And so Regina is going to shift you in your breakout rooms. Those two questions will be in your breakout rooms, and we're going to give you guys about 25 minutes. Make sure you introduce yourself to your colleagues as well as identify a spokesperson. So you can go into your breakout rooms.
They're going to hear different things. They always hear something different because they have layers of experience that the kids don't have. And if they are able to share with that experience with the kids, then they can have a conversation that's rich and deeper. So they can say, well, what did Ms. Tonda tell you? What do you think that meant? Well, why do you think that's important? Why did, and you can have that kind of conversation that actually seals in the experience and gets it usable. And the other piece was that to get them going, to get the parents in, I use kind of rhetoric to say, the ego, stroke the ego and say, you're important here. We want you. Please come. It's important that you share this experience. It's important that you're able to talk with your child later. And then I also poke the pain point to say, you know what? If your child can't get a job when they get finished with school, there's going to be some stuff that happens, and it's going to happen at your house. So maybe you want to make sure to prevent that by coming on to get going with this process before all the stuff that happens. One of the things that happens is a late night diaper run. Kids get early parenthood. And if there's early parenthood, there's going to be a late night diaper run. And the question is, who's going to make that diaper run? Nobody at the school, nobody in the community group. It's going to be at your house. So why don't you just come on over and make sure that that diaper run doesn't happen because you put yourself into the mix.
Well, you mentioned four consequences of
Right.
not being engaged, not giving serious thought to why your involvement is so important. Share some of that, because you also came up with I'm quite sure this is not yours, it could be, but what's in it for me as another strategy to get parents involved.
Right, to let them know what's in it for them. And when I say what's in it for you, I'm saying you need to make sure that they're clear on the consequences of not being involved and clear on the success that's available through the program. The four things that happen when kids really don't do well in their schooling and in their education are involvement with the penal system, unemployment and underemployment, substance abuse, and early parenthood. So all of those four things, if you let them fail, if you don't make sure that they know that it's important for them to be involved, then you're apt to get a real up close and personal experience with the ins and outs of the penal system that you don't want. Nobody wants that.
Right.
So I'm all about the prevention, and the prevention is what's in it for parents. That's the with them. That's the what's in it for me as far as parents are concerned.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Tonda. And Anna, do you want to say anything, or should we just move on to the next group?
I just want to add just real quick that the one thing that did work is we really struggled with getting parents involved in our program. I was with the 4-H Tech Wizards in Muskegon County in Michigan, and that site does not exist anymore thanks to our grant ending. But the one thing that really did work for us, given the nature of our program, was when we did a special event partnering with our community college's fabrication lab. So our young people and their families were able to go into a special event in a special setting with staff from a respected institution and an activity they wouldn't get to do anywhere else. And so finding that really niche interest of the young person that also then drew in their parents was what worked for us when getting them to sit in on programming, or even trying to communicate via email or talk to them after programming was proving very difficult.
Thank you for sharing that. Next group.
Okay, so that would be room 2. And some of the things that we talked about with some of the challenges, I know specifically with Creative Nomads, with the program, getting the dads involved. And one of the challenges was with the dads working, having a schedule that may require them to do extra work or be tired. One of the challenges was actually getting them engaged. Another one was identifying, working with partners, whether they were paying attention to their surveys to see whether or not the programming that was being provided was something they wanted, the parents wanted, and versus something that the school thought or the agency thought this might be a good idea for them. One of the strategies that came out that was a good strategy was, and we had quite a few people that were involved around arts, music and arts. So when parents know that their children are performing, that would be a way to get them engaged, that they would come out, because most parents want to see their babies
That's right. That's
on
right.
stage and performing. So that was one of the strategies that came out of our group. Also, one of the things that I do, I didn't mention in the group, but it came to my mind just now, is once a month or so, I will have just a 1-hour session on a Sunday afternoon. I'll take one word and just add theme like, let's define it, so that parents can give some input. And I usually don't just have parents, I'll have maybe like a school administrator, school teachers, people who have some area of expertise to be able to provide a resource for the parents. So I remember one day we just did it around tech, especially early in the pandemic, when children would probably be more engaged with computers and being home by themselves. Because I work with a lot of single parents, and instead of the children working and doing school, they were on the Xbox and doing Roblox and doing all of that.
Right.
So I had a speaker come in and talk about the mental health challenges that being on that type of technology throughout the day, and the impacts it would have on their children, and had the children involved and engaged in a conversation too.
Excellent, excellent.
That's us.
Beautiful. Next group, if you will. Thank you, Ms. Monica.
Thank you. On behalf of our group. Before we go on, Ms. Jill, did you have anything you wanted to add? You're muted.
Oh, I just want to say I'm working with the Baltimore Arts Education Initiative and Arts Every Day to address the inequity in access to arts education that exists with Baltimore City kids, especially in comparison to the counties all around us and other counties in Maryland, other districts in Maryland. Right now, for example, only 12% of our students have access to instrumental music instruction in the schools, whereas in the other counties that touch our borders, all the kids have access to strings and band instruction. And it hasn't been that way in Baltimore City since the early 1980s. We're trying to make sure that parents know that their it's not supposed to be an optional thing in schools. It's supposed to be there for the children, for all the children. So I put my contact information in the chat. There's going to be a town hall update with Dr. Santalese around this issue in early November. I'll make sure BCY knows about it, so because it's really going to take parent demand to push the school system on this issue, and most of our children do not have access to these areas if it's not in school. So it really needs to come, and it will help schools, it will help kids, it helps mental health, etc. And we know it helps academics. We have studies from here till next week, or the next century, that show how it helps children. So, all right, that's enough. I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Ms. Jill. Anyone else want to share?
Anyone from room 5?
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Aaron, Kim, Michael, Tammy, Wanda.
That was a large group. I know you all have something to share.
I think we can. Kim was our. Kim had to hop off at 5:30, so she sort of took the lead, and I had gotten in the room late. But I think we just echoed everyone else's sentiment that we didn't. A lot of us did not include the parents at first, and now we're starting to include them, and it's it's not easy.
Why not, Mike? I mean, why is we know? I mean,
just to think, I think speaking for our group, the organization I work for, I think it was an afterthought. I think I personally saw it happen during the pandemic when we were on virtual town hall, and we all sort of agreed that was one of the great things that came out of this pandemic, that the students, the mentees, and the parents were actually in the same room at the same time, so they could benefit from virtual programming. Whereas a lot of times, when you have in-person programming, the parent, like what was that lady's name with the beautiful cabinets? Tonda said they just drop them off, or the parent just is not included in the in-person programming. And I think going forward, I hope we don't slide backwards, because at least for our organization, we have a lot of parent involvement in our virtual town halls, and we talk about pretty heavy stuff.
By the way, Ms. Tonda referred to those parents as drop and run.
Drop and run, yes.
Right. So we appreciate that, Ms. Tonda, for labeling what it is. But Michael, we appreciate that. Anything else you want to share? Because again, thank you for being honest. Just letting folks know that it is not easy, and no, it's not easy, given all of the reasons that we stated earlier with obligations and responsibilities and just the changes that are occurring in our society. But again, we have to stay on course and commit ourselves. I mean, I like the fact that you mentioned that by not, giving this serious thought at the very beginning will have implications long term, because you have to do a lot in the beginning in order to create the environment and basically make certain that everybody understands how key and how essential parents and families are in this work. And again, I'm not sure why we have yet to appreciate that, understand that at the highest level, and make that commitment. I mean, some folks talk about we just don't have the resources. Some folks talk about staffing is an issue as well. So if you give it thought, then you can basically lay out and plan for this being a key component of your program and what that entails and what it means for the entire program to be successful. So we appreciate, Michael, you sharing that information.
And like David said, and I think, just for national organizations, like David said, they really focused on the student, and that's great. Yeah, you need to focus on the student, but like David said, then they go back to that home, and basically maybe everything they've learned, they're in this negative environment. So it's something that I think a lot of, especially national organizations that work with youth, don't think about, and wish they were on here to hear this because they need it.
And let me just add a perspective really, really quickly, because I think always hearing from colleagues is always super important. I think for me, one of the strategies that we may begin to think about is what does our intake or orientation process look like when we enroll students? And as we enroll students in our mentoring programs and our youth development programs, within the orientation or intake process, whatever we call it, that's our first opportunity to engage parents. Or is it just signing up for your numbers? Because I remember when I was a school teacher many moons ago, and I was blown away that a lot of times families would come enroll a child into school and you'd have to fill out an emergency card. And a lot of times it would be moms and grandmoms, they fill out the emergency card, but for the other parent, dad, it would be blank. And then I would start asking questions. Well, excuse me, ma'am, can I ask you a question? Is dad involved? And so again, I think that we got to be more deliberate at the point of intake or orientation when we're enrolling students in our program, because once again, that's our first opportunity to build with the parents, and then, follow up in terms of maybe doing some one-on-ones with parents, to then begin to be able to build a relationship with them, to maybe move them into, let's then do some small group stuff, because the reality is, and I don't know if Tammy is still on the line. I had stopped into one of the groups, and is Tammy still on board? She may have jumped off. But one of the things that Tammy had said was that, she's running a program now for girls, but there was a time when she was a single mother, kind of unsure of herself, and she would go to meetings. She may or may not speak up because she didn't think anybody really cared. And so I think also, a lot of times, I think we're looking for numbers, right? Oh, Tammy's saying she's having audio issues. I think a lot of times, y'all, we're looking for numbers versus building genuine, authentic relationships with parents that we can leverage. Because at the end of the day, a parent, and I'm a parent, many of us on the line are parents. I could care less about what kind of flyer you have or what kind of website you have. I want to know, are you able to provide the services that you advertise? And so I think this notion of, what are we doing when we're signing young people up? And I think we need to begin to rethink or think through that process and maybe add an additional layer that, after the parent enrolls the child in the mentoring program, that instead of sending an email, I'm going to make a phone call. I still think people appreciate a phone call versus an email or a text message. And I just wanted to share that with you, because there are a lot of parents struggling pre-pandemic. And now that we're, fully in, because we still fully in a pandemic, y'all. Don't believe what people are telling you. Folk are still dying. That I think that a lot of times, we're so impersonal in terms of our engagement. I love, my daughter's a senior in high school. I love when I get a call from the teacher or the person at college bound versus a text message or an email. And so again, I think that we really need to think through our service delivery, think through intake, think through the orientation process. For those of y'all that are running mentor programs, and you just have moms and grandmoms signing up children, ask them, is dad involved? Can dad be a part of this larger process to engage your child? And then if you get some pushback, like, I ain't really feeling that dude, we don't really like each other, then that's different. But to not ask, I think is problematic. And I'm curious. I know Jeanette on the same page with my good friend Jeanette, who's done extensive work in the mentoring space. But any thoughts or reactions to anything that I've said, or any other comments in terms of solutions or strategies or things that we need to begin to think about in terms of working with parents?
David,
if I could-
I'm sorry.
Okay.
David, okay. Hello. I think that one thing that I can say that I heard that was that kind of seemed small, but it was very powerful, and that was ask the parents, talk to them, and see what their needs are. Because even as an educator, a lot of times it's all of a tell. Here are the facts. Here is this. Here is that, and it's very limited conversation about, well, what do you want to see? Or what would you like to add? Or what would you like to have? Or what do you want to see your child do? Anything like that. And sometimes those kind of questions are forgotten or just bypassed. And if we can get into the habit of asking those kind of questions more often, then it'll make the parents feel like their opinions actually do matter. And I think that a lot of times parents don't get involved because sometimes they feel like their opinion doesn't matter. And they say the same thing at home, and then they come to, in my case, they say the same thing at home, and then they come to school and say it in school, and the child gets tired of hearing the same thing, or almost feel like they're being reprimanded over and over again. They kind of shut down and don't want to hear from the parents, or want the children or want the parents to be quiet. But if we can engage the parents more and build a bond, almost like a triangle between the parent, the child, and in my case, myself as a counselor, then I think that we gain the parents, help the parents feel a little safer and being supportive.
Excellent point.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think somebody else wanted to jump in.
Yeah, it was me. As I was listening to you, David, speak, you reminded me of how charter schools operate. When I was working in a charter school, when they have their parents through that lottery, or all that they have to go through to get into that charter school, they are mandated that they have to give a certain amount of hours. It's not optional. They have to volunteer a certain amount of hours to be a part of that school. And it makes me think about, we can raise the bar and elevate the expectation of parents. Yes. That we as an agency can give them an expectation, what we expect of them as parents in terms of participating and being involved. I know for the parents of my scholar athletes, I can hardly catch the parents because, they're right there at those games and they're making sure their kids are getting to those rehearsals, to those practices, but they're not doing well academically. Right. And they have me as that support, but they are elevating the sports above their academics. So that's why I really appreciate, Tonda, those 4 points that you said, and I wrote them down to touch those pain points to find out if you don't invest now, you want to pay later kind of aspect of it.
And Monica, I want to say this really quickly. You hit the nail on the head. Parents who are raising children that are student athletes, like if they're playing Pop Warner or AAU, man, they're traveling all over the country, right? May not be coming to PTA meetings, may not be supporting some of the extracurricular activities. So I agree with you 100%. A really good friend of mine, David Banks in New York City, Eagle Academy, a school-based model. They have 98% parent participation because they not playing. If you want to be a student in one of their schools and one of their programs, parents have to participate. Have to.
Right. Expectations have to be high. We have to set the bar high, and we have to basically let parents know that to not participate is not an option. Now, again, we're not going to get everybody, but again, we've got to basically go into this component of our program with high expectations and letting parents know, as Ms. Tonda expressed in my session, that I may stroke your ego, but I'm also going to do what? I'm going to poke at your pain points, short-term and long-term. And when you do that, you got to basically give folks a compelling reason for getting involved and being, and again, a lot of people, we're not saying that parents don't want to do that, but we got to help them understand the significance and the importance. And that comes from having the right staff person, the right attitude ourselves, because some staff members basically are not, good for reaching out to anybody, more or less, let alone parents. So you got to have the right staff person who can empathize and sympathize with the parents, what parents are going through, and then basically help bring them along. And I think if we bring all of these pieces of the puzzle together, we will see more parents engaged. I think we're going to take one more response. I think Regina is giving us a signal to maybe take one more response, and then we're going to basically go back and complete our presentation. Anyone else want to chime in real quick? If not, then Regina, let's go back.
I have a question. Oh, yep, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes. Ms. Buxton?
Oh, so I was just wondering if anybody had any programs where like they're mentoring like the family, the whole family unit, and not just the child, because it's that the gap is with the parents that still need to be raised sometimes, and not only sometimes being raised, setting priorities, like the other end, like what you said with Pop Warner, I used to play basketball, and the other end of it is all-star children who parents are never in the stands because they prioritize work over ever showing up for their children. So it's like sometimes a family may need to learn how to be able to budget, or just tightening up your budget to know that not I can come to every game, but I'm going to show up to these games that matter. And if like with the big brothers and the mentors, like we had big brothers for like parents and stuff that felt then when the parents weren't there to like have people to feel like creating rebuilding that village, like you said, reconstructing that village, but starting at the top, starting with the child, I'm at the parent and not just the child.
Excellent point. Again, if someone knows of, we used to work with rites of passage programs where that was a key component, that we were not just doing rites with the youth, but we were also doing rites with the entire family. And I hear you, Ms. Buxton, and that is critical. That's why even if you're not mentoring the entire family, there should be efforts to provide all kinds of supports to parents who may be lacking in what their parenting role entails, what it all means. That's a key part of the process of helping parents understand more about their relationship, not only to the child, but also to the program. And if you can provide those kinds of sessions around, how to maximize your connection to your children, how to maximize your outcomes regarding academic performance, et cetera, et cetera. If you can offer that menu of supports in terms of sessions and workshops, I think it's valuable for any program working with parents. You've got to have a menu of things that will benefit parents at all levels. At all levels. Anybody know of programs that basically work with the entire family?
Actually, I do. That's the foundation of the work that I do. I'll take a family whole village approach.
Also, you guys check out the Detroit Parenting Network. I know the sisters that founded the Detroit Parenting Network They have a whole family model, and they also do tremendous outreach. They have a parent mobile. They do door to door. Some of the things like Ms. Monica was talking about, that community engagement. Check out the Detroit Parenting Network. They do a lot of stuff around helping parents navigate school culture, understanding school law, understanding special education, being able to navigate special education, real hands-on, very, very grassroots, old school organizing techniques. Again, knocking on doors, showing up at community events, putting community education tables at the supermarket. Again, I think we have relied so much on like social media. We've forgotten what it's like to just be in a community and just like chopping it up with people. Like, my name is so-and-so, and I work at the community center around the corner, and we are trying to engage parents. I think, again, one of the challenges of so much technology is that we've forgotten how to, the grassroots thing.
Mhm. And when I do the career exploration piece, I have the first session and the last session really to be for parents, because I feel like it's all about trying to get kids launched, and you're not really going to do a good job of launching yourself. You need to have somebody at home helping you to see things, helping you to fill out things. And, anybody who is the parent, you realize that sometimes at 9 at night, they come and say, I'm supposed to have this thing in the mail tomorrow. Can you help me? So you need to kind of let the parents know this is going to happen, and you need to be ready because you are the one. You're the help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Very good.
And I think Brian, I'm going back to the survey piece. Brian was asking thoughts on regarding surveys, in person, online, one-on-one, thoughts on thoughts on, I think, just surveying parents in general.
I think text messaging, picking up the phone and calling. Again, I think you get a greater ROI one-to-one contact.
So can we go back to the slides? Okay, thanks, Regina. So, some other tips that we have mentioned, David talked about, Michael, when he indicated that it was not the intent of the program to engage parents. If that was the intent, it was only on paper. So start with the intention. That's evidence-based. Are you going to involve parents and families in your program at the very beginning? And if you are, then you need to basically set that plan in motion, develop that plan and set it in motion and stick to that plan. But there has to be a plan. Build a strong orientation process. I think David alluded to this as being critical. Expectations, for everyone, parents including, families included in the expectations of what is expected or what we want from them. Make it plain, make it clear, explain the goals of the program. Again, majority of the parents want success for their children. And they want to know, I think someone mentioned, they want to know if the program can deliver on its mission and its goals. I think David made that a key point. Can the program deliver? Does the program value and respect my child or the children in the program? And that will become very, very evident, in time, but those are critical questions, but you got to basically set clear expectations and then stay connected. We might start with a big splash at the very beginning, and then we will basically do what? Fizzle out. So all the contact and all the support and all the rah for parents basically starts to fizzle as we get deeper into the program and find that this is another add-on that we really don't want to deal with. We're simply saying to everyone, stay connected. If you want parents to stay involved, as you want young people to stay involved, you've got to basically do what? Follow up, follow through, and value and respect their time and their input. Next slide. With time running out, you all, we will basically just share some of the slides, maybe lift up one or two of the statements on the slide, but keep this moving because I think we're getting to the point where I think we only have about 5 or 6 minutes left before we share with you all some parting comments in terms of what's coming up and what you need to do beyond the presentation. So characteristics of, and again, you're going to get this slide deck and you will be able to refer back to it. But again, I think Monica even mentioned successes. And we all know that when you basically highlight the successes of the young people in your program and invite parents to witness that, you get more parents out. So keep that in mind, basically highlight young people's success in the program and the event. When you host that event, invite parents, and I'm certain that we'll get more parents out. Expectations, I mentioned that. Ongoing skills building workshops is key. And there's a menu of skill building workshops that we can provide you to consider when you are working with parents and families. From some renowned experts in the field, we even conduct sessions for parents and families around their strengths, around culturally grounded assets. A lot of our presentations are strength-based, and so we lift up, not tear down the parents and the families that we're working with, and consistently assess and evaluate the progress. And don't be afraid to simply admit that either we're succeeding or we're not. If you admit that you are succeeding and you're not, then that's going to basically, again, show up in the end with regards to the success of your programs and actually meeting your goals. Barriers and challenges, this will be real quick. There will be barriers and challenges. We've mentioned some of those. The absence of a clear plan of action, approaches to engage parents, lack an inviting and welcoming parent-centered environment, staff's negative perceptions of parents and families. Basically, the absence of parents and families. This is key on the planning team. When you're starting up your parent component or families and parent component, do you have parents and families on the planning team to make certain that you're getting their input, their perspective, their thoughts, their recommendations and suggestions, and the lack of a real long-term commitment to this component. That's another point that we need to lift up because again, we start off with a bang, but we basically move through the program as if, and parents recognize that, children recognize that, if we're not with them all the way, if we're not going to go all the way with them throughout this process and help them navigate and understand the power of what we're trying to do, then you're going to basically fail in your efforts to keep parents engaged and families engaged. Next slide. Key strategies, real quick, identify a staff member who is willing to make a long-term commitment to the effort if you can. I mean, some programs can, you might even try to hire a volunteer, but pay the volunteer something if they're going to perform that role. Educate parents, and I think this is Monica and Tanda's point about their involvement. Parents about the importance of their involvement through special parents-only welcoming sessions. And sessions that I think Tanda mentioned something in the beginning, something at the end, and always something in between that emphasizes the positive points that we brought up at the very beginning of this presentation. Establish a plan of action, refer to it, basically have someone else take a look at it. We might think that's the best laid plans, but we need other eyes on it. And, you can share with us if you need to basically get another perspective on, is this plan sufficient or will it basically yield the return on the investment that we are looking for? Address safety concerns and visitation policies. Next slide. Again, develop an engagement team. Parents, caretakers, and guardians. Can't emphasize that enough. We've seen programs basically talk about parent involvement, et cetera, and no parents can't find caretakers anywhere at the beginning on the planning of what it is that you're trying to develop for them. So again, keep that in mind as you work through, as you develop your family engagement component. And then, of course, needless to say, family communications or friendly communication activities for parents ongoing. David mentioned, flyers that are generic, basically really could be sent to anyone and everyone. That's token kind of outreach. A lot of parents pick up on that. A lot of folks pick up on that, and they will basically, see it for what it is. Next slide. The need for collaboration, can't emphasize this enough. One program can't do this work by itself. You got to network, you got to collaborate, you got to form partnerships. That's not only for youth development, mentoring programs, et cetera, but you have a network of programs out there that have worked with this population, parents and families, around workforce development, around expungement, around mental health and well-being and wellness, around all the issues that we know are germane and critical for parent success. And so we need to basically keep this, not just talk about collaboration, but seriously engage in powerful and sustaining networks and collaboration. My favorite African proverb, again, you see it behind me: if you want to go quick, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. That further validates the significance of collaboration. And I would like to hope that we all want to go together and go far. Next slide. Questions. Any questions before we end our presentation? David, you want to say something before we?
No, just want to thank the folks who hanging out with us tonight. Any additional questions that you guys may have? As I said before, and I think I said to one of the groups, that might have been in group 5. If we don't figure this out and
Right.
do a better job of engaging parents at a higher level, it really doesn't matter who the police chief is or many of the elected officials, because there's a huge disconnect from the day-to-day realities of what parents are faced with, versus what people are saying in terms of, in the suites and in the office buildings. Even pre-COVID, families were struggling. And so we know now that parents are really, really struggling at a higher level. And so I will urge the folks that are in queue to continue to be ever vigilant in your work with parents. And again, let's start thinking about quality versus quantity, building authentic relationships. And let me just say this really quickly, and then please drop your questions in the chat or unmute your line. Again, I talk a lot about the fatherhood work, because doing that at a high level and really passionate about it. We're doing groups with dads, and they're coming because we're authentic and we're building individual relationships with them. And I think that that's the strategy, that if you can touch the hearts, the minds, and the souls of these parents, and you get to know them, not just because they have a child registered in your program. And so those are some things that I want you guys to take away from the presentation. Let's bring up the evaluation, information for the evaluation. There is the link, or you can go to the QR code for the evaluation. It is in the chat. You can also email Maryland Mentor for a certificate of completion for today's training. And as I said before, want to thank you, because this is the work, y'all, that a lot of folk don't want to do. But it ain't going away. And so we'll give you a couple of minutes.
I want to let folks know, sorry, if you're unfamiliar, you can take your cell phone and just hold it right up to the QR code, and it'll take you right to the eval for tonight's session. And that link has also been posted in the chat box while we're doing questions, if you want to start completing your evaluation. And just so you know, for those who complete an evaluation, person will be selected of those who complete the evaluation from each session to receive a gift from Mentor Maryland MDDC and Strategic Resources Group. And David and Richard, there is a question in the there is a question in the chat box. Brian is asking, does collaboration, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Brian, you can open up and just ask your question.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was trying to do two things. I was wondering, is a formal MOU, because, you know, we talk about collaborations and being specific about how that partnership will be carried out. What's everybody's opinion about that?
Yes.
Memorializing
right.
the
Yes.
impact on
And emphatic, yes. I mean,
Yes.
yes, Brian, yes.
Yes. You want to have things in writing.
And with metrics to measure or to evidence if the collaboration is working, if the collaboration is real. So you need to be able to evidence everything that we're doing. We should be able to evidence it within time. You know, so, you know, we've all talked about these are lofty terms. These are powerful transformational terms, but if we're not basically evidencing, you know, the work through our actions and through the programming, then it all is for naught. So, Brian, thank you for bringing that up. And we have examples of what that MOU or what that MOA, Memorandum of Agreement or Understanding entails, what it includes and what it looks like. But we appreciate you bringing that up.
Great. Nothing like having examples to work from.
That's right. The discussion on, I see Regina is ahead of us. So she indicated in the chat, what time is the session on Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And it will give folks who attend a little bit more time to go deeper into some of the issues that were brought up during our session this evening. That's this coming Friday, October 1st, I believe the date is, and right, from 10 a.m. to 12 noon.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, here are remaining sessions. We'll have a small group, as Richard indicated. Then there'll be a session for coaches, anyone who was in the coaching space, because we know that youth coaches are mentoring young people at a higher level, but may not necessarily get a lot of the TA and training. And then November 11th and 12th, we're hosting a citywide youth forum. We have a dynamic array of content experts and a really powerful agenda. You'll be receiving information to register within the next week or so. And we had 2 comments. Jeanette wants the link for Friday. Regina, do you have the link for Friday?
Yes, I can post it.
Okay, if you can post that. And then Brian's question was about RFPs. Brian, I would suggest you continue to monitor the BCYF Fund website, and then you could go to their website and shoot them an email in terms of when they're going to put new RFPs out on the street.
Just a quick note. So in terms of the RFPs for the future RFPs for the youth fund, there's if you look on the FAQ section of the BCYF website, the next round of requests for proposals will be announced in spring of 2022. And there's other questions folks can get answered just by going to the BCYF website, bcyfund.org. I'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, Regina just dropped that in the chat for you guys, but stay abreast of the website. And again, let's make this happen, y'all. I'm gonna say it again. Deeper engagement with parents. We gotta figure this out. Any other parting questions, comments? Well, once again, we want to thank you guys for hanging out. Again, we know this particular topic is a heavy lift, but we want to thank you guys. Let's stay in contact. You'll be receiving follow-up emails about the evaluation materials, as well as information about the symposium and future workshop opportunities. So we want to we want to thank you guys. Have a good night. Continue to be safe. And let's get this work done, y'all.
It's not an option. Thank you all. Have a great one. Be safe, be well.
All right.